Hello, this is Gil here, and I'm gonna go through the pathway to reopening our schools, the COVID-19 recovery guidance put out by the Imperial County Office of Education. It was done with the local school districts, health department, and the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association and local leaders, not including myself, but I ain't mad at that. So it's pretty much, here's the introduction, kind of putting it out there. I did make a disclaimer at the bottom, though, that this is rapidly evolving. As we've seen with our governor's orders, local orders, things can change at a moment's notice. One day, the next, things are changing. And so a week from now, this guidance might be outdated. So this will be updated as things change, but as of right now, things haven't. So pretty much, what do we know? And number one is there's currently no vaccine to prevent COVID-19, and if we do happen to get a vaccine by this year, everything will change. Everything changes with the vaccine. Personally, if getting a vaccine means being able to have assemblies, see parents, see students, see families, teachers, staff, all be able to gather for an assembly where we come together and do awards and presentations. Hey, sign me up. Whether it's Bill Gates, whoever has a vaccine, inject it straight into me. But until then, we are with these guidance. So pretty much general information from the state on this page. The four roadmap stages put out by the state, pretty general, and much just, although the state put out guidelines, they also give give local control to each county, which is on the following page. But I like to go right on this part. On before reopening, all facilities must perform a detailed risk assessment, implement a site-specific protection plan, and train employees on how to limit the spread of COVID-19, including how to screen themselves for symptoms and stay home if they have them. Obviously, both of these, what kind? As far as the training, what kind? Is it simple video? Do we need consultants? Do they need to be certified? What are the costs? I think those are interesting questions that are going to come out of this, as well as the risk assessment and site-specific protection plan. Right here is our local roadmap to recovery. We are currently in stage 2, lower risk workplace, which as of right now, schools and childcare facilities are closed. Obviously, that can change, and I assume we'll be in a higher stage, whether 2B, which is stage 2 higher risk workplace, or stage 3 by August, which would allow schools to be open. But as we've seen with the governor's guidelines, this is changing as well. Things that were in stage 3 were reopened last week, and also just things that were in stage 3 got bumped to stage 2 high risk. So this is changing as we move forward as well. Closure assumptions. So Imperial County Office said we'll collaborate with local officials regarding the safe reopening of schools, and kind of lay out some things. One thing that stuck with me is encourage local districts and charters to use the same practices whenever possible, so as to send consistent messages to students, parents, community members, and staff. As I've seen what the state allowed counties to do is they could go put stricter measures in place, but not more lenient. So I think you'll see that with school districts as well. There's going to be like a baseline, and some districts schools may have stricter practices than others. They can't go more lenient than the baseline, but they may have more stricter practices in place. So that's something to be aware of. Also, COVID-19 expected to be a public health threat until a vaccine is developed and widely used. It will take until... So I think the last sentence is, it will take until the end of 2021 school year to distribute enough vaccine to ensure adequate coverage. Locally, as we've seen with the Imperial County, we have been heavily impacted by COVID-19. We are a disadvantaged community, and so hope our local leaders and public officials can advocate for being prioritized on if and when a vaccine is released. As we've seen, we not only serve our local population of families and students and the workforce, but also Mexicali. Also, our local hospitals not only serve Imperial and Mexicali, but they also serve the prisons. They also serve the snowbirds. They also serve truckers. They also serve people just driving through, which we have a lot of traffic coming from Arizona, San Diego, Riverside County. So if there's any way that our local leaders, if you're a parent or a local someone in local education, please talk with your local leaders about advocating that if and when a vaccine is released, for the Imperial County to be prioritized due to the heavy impacts we've seen from from the coronavirus. So number 3, decisions to reopen schools will be based upon and lays out measures, and that's all going to be done in conjunction with our local health department and the metrics in place, which you can find at the health department's website. Here's a basic decision tree put out by CDC on reopening. Pretty general questions. Here on this page, counties, districts, and schools across California will have different timelines and approaches. I believe that as well. I know there was a uniform approach to when schools decided to close, which I think was a really good thing in regards to not having any confusion. But I think as we move forward with reopening, I think you'll see kind of like what you saw with cities. At one point, El Centro said, we want to reopen. And then you heard the Imperial Mayor, Daryl Pechtel, the one with the Sam Elliott-like voice, say they want to reopen. So you might see some fractures among schools, mainly because you have some school districts that in cities that are heavily impacted, that are larger. You have some school districts that only have one school, and so they might feel like they have more control. So you might see some staggering of openings and whatnot, so that's something also to keep in mind. Number 6, reduction in school funding are likely as state revenues decline due to the economic impact of this pandemic. As I've said before, school districts are gonna be in a tough spot this year, and so adequate funding for increased costs associated with the response to the pandemic and alternative methods for funding. So ICOE will help school districts in identifying that. I think one thing is, the optimist in me will see that moving this upcoming year, we can really focus on relationships. I know sometimes schools can jump on shiny new programs and technology, and which has those related costs to it. But now that we're going to be tasked with doing more with less, we can kind of go back to basics and the relationship between our students and families, our students and administrators, our students and teachers, our students and staff, our staff and administrators. So all these relationships, it doesn't cost anything to have a relationship, a trust, one built on trust and open dialogue. So hopefully with obviously nothing's going to be easy with cuts in funding, but the relationship aspect of our schools, I hope, can really be highlighted. Number 7, schools that continue to use distance learning and or hybrid approach, will need to continue to provide students access to meals when they are not on campus. So whether your child is attending on campus or not, meals will be provided to them, whether via pickup or that's up to your local school district. In-person school attendance will likely be less. We've seen that, whether it be parents not unable to rather have the child at home, or worried about public health or their ability to work. So we do foresee attendance being really impacted, at least in the beginning of the year and possibly throughout the entire school year. Another consideration is staff members who are 65 and over and children and staff with underlying health conditions may be advised to choose to continue to stay home. And so that's another, the vulnerable population of COVID-19, and how do we protect them while also serving them. So that's something also to look into. Schools are allowed to reopen, kind of plans for when they're allowed to reopen. Also, effects from COVID-19 may cause students and staff to need more social and emotional support that was provided prior to the pandemic. As I've said, the mental health aspect of COVID-19 on all of us, is real, not just for adults, but children alike. And so school districts are going to look very closely in how they can provide those services within their budget. Expectations regarding student learning outcomes in year 20 will need to be re-examined. I think we all seen I think parents across the board have seen how beneficial and how tough it is to teach. And so we're going to see this time away from school and a disruption in a child's environment, the impacts it had in regards to their education. So pretty much that page. I think this one's an interesting one, governance structure. Each school district will have to launch a return to school committee. And so really this is going to be done as soon as possible. Wherever your school district is, they'll be launching this very soon, as it's going to be needed before school starts in August. So the committee should have a representative from each school in the district, articulate a vision in line with local values and community needs. It may include creating subcommittees, institute a regular virtual meeting schedule, meet with or survey key stakeholders. So if you're a parent, if you're an employee, I think reach out to your local school district administrator or board member, trustee, to ask about this return to school committee and how you can be involved if you really want to take part in guiding your school or school district in reopening. It's a great way to provide input and be involved. So pretty much it. They're gonna have to, and the return to school committee is gonna have to provide consistent updates to stakeholders. In planning, so this is kind of general what schools need to plan for and need to address moving forward. We're going to conduct a work site assessment, plans for training, the role school plan to learn local health department of COVID-19 cases. So I think the relationship has been built. I think fortunately, our small community is going to benefit. Obviously, when you're in a large school district with 50 schools, as one of my friends in Corona Norco has, it's kind of difficult to have a real communication with the local health department, whereas in the valley, we are smaller. So I think that benefits us in regards to communicating, the communication between our schools and local health department. So some measures on campus access, pretty general. I think it's encourage potential visitors to use virtual means for business with the school whenever possible. So that means how communication can be really heavily impacted by this. That might mean meeting with the superintendent, principal, teacher will have to be done via text, email, Zoom, FaceTime. I think it's the push for technology in regards to communication just got sped up due to Corona-19. School cleaning and disinfecting and other health safety practices. Pretty general information on and much of it issued by the CDC. And I think we've seen many of it: sanitize, wash hands, and proper equipment. Consider the assignment of restrooms for specific classes. Discourage sharing of items that are difficult to clean or disinfect. And implement some form of screening for illness or infection control for staff and students before they enter school class halls and or upon entry into buses. Those are things that discussions are going to be held within your school district. Also, schools should establish procedures for safely transporting anyone who is sick. And so that's going to be something also. And I'm just, like I said, guys, I'm just kind of pointing at the things that stuck out to me as I went through this guidance. Prior to reopening, consider requiring hand washing stations for distribution across various campus locations. So you might see more hand washing stations. You might see Who knows? I have no idea. Maybe you'll see drinking fountains converted to hand washing stations, just because that's gonna be needed. Also, obtain the necessary cleaning supplies, hand sanitizers with at least 60% alcohol, face covering. So your schools are going to need to be prepared for that. And like I said, these are costs that may not have been needed last year and are going to be needed this year. So your schools are going to have to um, move some numbers around in the budget to accommodate this. Also, some considerations: sneeze guards in high traffic areas, flexible screens between bathroom sinks if they're not 6 feet apart, isolation areas for students and staff, and then the inspection and cleaning of buses, and class restrooms, hallways, and common areas daily per CDC guidelines. One thing that it says discontinue use of shared food and beverage equipment in employee break rooms. I know. So do we just lock the fridge? Do we not allow another question that's going to be asked, discussed with staff and administration on the break room and the touching and grabbing of shared items. Obviously, the increase of circulation of outdoor air as much as possible by opening windows and doors when safe to do so. I don't think that'll be possible in August in the valley, or when it gets hot at the end of the school year. So I think we have beautiful weather during the winter months, so we'll be able to have doors open more and get some air circulating. But there's going to be some weeks in our school year where that's just going to be physically impossible due to the heat. So also, buses are going to be needed to be cleaned and disinfected after each route. Protective equipment, prioritize provision and use of face masks to staff based upon risks. So staff is the PPE may be prioritized. Develop job-specific guidance requirements for glove use, protective hours, and gowns. So when do you need to wear this and when not? And then also calculate the burn rate of PPE so you can just properly prepare. Some recommendations for practicing physical distancing. That may mean, and like I said, these are all suggestions. At the end of the day, this is going to come down to your local school district, and that's why it's important to be involved, whether through the committee or just through simple communication with your administrators or trustees. But rearranging desk tables in classrooms to be at least 6 feet apart, holding classes in larger rooms such as a gym, library, cafeteria, placing markers on the pavement, implementing changes in the daily, weekly school schedules. So there's going to be a lot of discussion had on physical distancing and the practice of it. Some of these examples, and they provide several examples, that means will the number of students on campus be 50% of normal? Will you divide all classes into equal groups? Will you implement a block schedule? Will you limit campus to 25% of a normal attendance? And will you divide them into 4 groups? And how do you go about that? Having students attend schools in shifts, having some grades attend school in person and others via distance learning, having certain students learn from home, having students that cleanse classrooms that cannot be conducted remotely. How do we address that? So it lays out some examples and moving forward with the practice of physical distancing. And each school district may be different, will be different. I guarantee you that. So I thought this was interesting as well. And another consideration that returning students to in-person school by grade, with younger students starting first to allow for social distancing. Elementary students will return to school first for a week. Then middle school report the second week, and high school students report the third week. Like I said, this is all suggestions. They're just laying out some ideas. Nothing's set in stone, and obviously it's going to be done through the committee. Not just through the committee, but also the district working with labor unions and parents. And so, and like you said, guys, as we've seen, this is how to address the COVID-19 and the reopening, whether just through the economy, through our counties, through our cities, has been somewhat divisive. Let's be real. And so any measure your school or school district will take is not going to have more than likely will not have full consensus. There are going to be parents or staff or administrators or trustees who may not agree, and so I think it's important to just be prepared for that. It might how we reopen I may not agree with it, and so just be ready for some lively discussions as we get closer to opening day. Also, I think this is an interesting recommendation: looping this will allow teachers to keep their 2019-2020 students during the 2021 school year, and this kind of ties back to what I said on the building of the relationships. They also recommend postponing high contact activities in classes, certain PE activities, field trips, choir, and high contact after school activities such as football and restructure athletic, performing arts, and club activities to keep students engaged while physically distant. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look at as well. And modifying BAL schedules, and also holding staff meetings virtually. So staff meetings can be held via Zoom. Also, some more recommendations to limit student exposure to many individuals during the day. Consider staggering times when students and staff are moving outside their classroom work areas, delivering meals to classrooms, having students eat lunch and snacks in the classrooms or outside in designated areas, using block schedules or rotating teachers, supervising the boarding and seating of students in buses to ensure physical distancing. And so these are once more considerations and questions that each school is going to have to ask and answer. Staff and labor issues. They encourage schools need continuous and an ongoing communication with staff and bargaining units to facilitate schools reopening and to respond. Well, staff and bargaining units should already be having open communications already before this, so I hope so. So, schools may choose to use a predetermined fitness for duty checklist to determine if an employee is safe to return to work under what conditions. So it may just be a checklist on staff that wants to return to work. Mental and emotional support, and schools will need to determine how they will address this and support the mental and emotional well-being of students and staff, and offer a link to, I believe, the website. Like I said, schools are encouraged to plan for positive supportive re-entry, notify teachers, staff, students, post information, and help. So, quickly identify students or staff experiencing problems adjusting, provide personal supports, provide specialized assistance, and activate the mental health support service team. So schools have a lot of work ahead of them as we move forward until August, but rest assured, each school district will be ready. Burrell Elementary School District will be ready. Right? Communication with parents, students, employees in the community, proactive communication. Some of these things, we should be doing them before Corona, so it just kind of helps drive it home even more so. And so that's it. And then it has a bunch of links to some general resources from the state to local level. But like I said, a lot of it's going to be local control. And so get involved with your local schools. There's also going to be an election come November, so this may tie in with that as well. Ask your school board members and trustees what their ideas and plans are, or they might just want to hear from you, because as a trustee, I've been just as lost. It's been a very tough, fast time right now. So thank you to the Imperial County Office of Ed for putting this together and not including me. That's fine, but but thank you. I know it's a lot of work and really fast as it's going, and look forward to seeing how this may be updated in the future, because like I said, the governor can say one thing and it changes everything else. So thank you all for listening. Hopefully this kind of gave you a general overview of the recovery guidance for our local school districts. And stay safe, stay healthy, and stay home if possible. Thank you and take care.